Story 1. Service Champions. We paid for someone to come and service the HVAC system in our newly purchased home several months before summer. Sure enough, when summer arrived, the air conditioning was not working. I brought in someone I trusted to install a new air conditioning system instead of using Service Champions. In under 2 minutes, he went straight to the system and showed me the wire they had unplugged during their service. He informed me that it was a common tactic of theirs to convince people their air conditioning system was faulty, allowing them to sell unnecessary services for thousands of dollars. I dodged a bullet. It is an unethical company. Story 2. This is embarrassing, but it worked out in the end. My old Xbox developed a major hardware failure. I searched for fixes and found a suggestion claiming that the problem was due to poor soldering inside the console. It mentioned that by placing it in the microwave for a few seconds, the solder would soften enough to restore the connection. I was quite skeptical, but the console was already broken, so I had nothing to lose, or so I thought. I put it in the microwave, set the timer for 10 seconds, and started it. Sparks flew, flames erupted, and a chunk the size of a large coin blew out from the front, leaving the whole console scorched and hot. I cannot confirm if this resolved the soldering issue, but given that I created a much larger problem, it seemed irrelevant. Realizing the extent of my mistake and scrambling to cover for myself, I hid the console under the TV and insisted to my girlfriend at the time that it had randomly exploded. It must have been a wiring fault, right? Well, she was furious, but not with me. She called the manufacturer and expressed her concerns about a dangerous product that could have started a fire or injured someone nearby, demanding a replacement. Since I hadn't removed any screws or stickers, they couldn't prove that I had tampered with it. And who would consider the possibility that it had been microwaved? In the end, I received a free replacement console. Story 3. I was overcharged by a taxi driver in Naples. It cost €55 for a 15-minute ride from the airport to our hotel. This is particularly frustrating because I had been warned about dishonest taxi drivers beforehand, but my jet lag and exhaustion made me easily deceived. Story 4. I shared my Xbox password with someone so they could help me achieve my 10th prestige. However, they changed my password, stole all my games, and charged my card. 10 years later, I recovered the password and retrieved all my games, plus more. Story 5. I donated $100 to a charity that claimed to help victims of gang violence. Since my friend was killed due to gang violence, it tugged at my heartstrings. Later, I saw on the news the mugshot of the same person to whom I gave the money, as he was arrested for running a fake charity scam. Story 6. In 2015, my girlfriend's work received a fax about a great deal on travel if you called the travel agent to book a vacation. We both contributed to the deposit, sent it, and couldn't get in contact with them again. Fortunately, we caught it early, had the card shut down, and got our money reimbursed. Story 7. I bought a speaker set from a truck at a gas station when I was about 23 years old. They said it was worth $1,000 but offered to sell it for $200. For some reason, I bought it. It wasn't worth $50. Story 8. Get a job at a young age. Keep working until old age. Retire, hoping I don't have to return to work someday. Story 9. Those frustrating free IQ tests. I take a test that is much longer than necessary, always wondering what my results will be. I reach the end and discover that I have to purchase a certificate to see my IQ. Story 10. A few years ago, I fell for a classic too good to be true online shopping scam. I saw an advertisement for an incredibly cheap, high-end laptop from a seemingly legitimate website. The deal was irresistible, and I convinced myself it was just a lucky find. After paying, I received a confirmation email and eagerly awaited my new laptop. Weeks passed with no updates. When I tried to contact customer service, I received vague responses or none at all. I finally realized I had been misled when the website disappeared entirely. It was a tough lesson in skepticism and online safety. Now, I always check reviews, look for secure payment options, and verify the legitimacy of online sellers before making any purchases. Story 11. 4 years ago, I invested in a gold-finding expedition aimed at recovering gold from sunken cargo ships from World War II. I invested £1,000. They kept making excuses about the weather and eventually requested more money from investors. I chose not to invest any further. I removed the name because I do not have concrete evidence that it is a scam. Story 12. I once visited a fortune teller for a palm reading. It sounded convincing, so I paid for a card session. I stopped when they requested $400 to import coffee beans from Peru for a ritual. Story 13. I work for a local Teamster union, and about 10 years ago, a company attended one of our meetings, selling union discounted vacation packages to Universal Studios and Disney World. The cost wasn't significantly lower, but it was about 25 to 35% cheaper than the regular price. There were no timeshare complications. You would sit with them, fill out the tickets you wanted, and while you waited, they'd process everything and print out the ticket vouchers for you. This applied to hotels as well. You'd choose what you wanted, and they'd check availability over the phone so you could hear it. Everything would be set up, and you'd receive emails with verification codes and all necessary information. Many people participated. Out of 200 attendees at the meeting, nearly 100 were getting the packages. I bought a 5-day Universal package and an on-site hotel for my family of 5 plus my fiancé's parents. We saved a significant amount of money, and except for a brief moment of questioning the authenticity of it all, I felt very comfortable afterwards. I received all of our tickets and reservation details months in advance, had everything printed out, so nothing was missed, and we packed up 2 cars to head down to Orlando. Upon arrival, I went to check into the hotel for everyone, and everything seemed fine. They had my card and ID on file, and the rooms were actually ready early, as we arrived 5 to 6 hours ahead of time. Then the trouble began. The lady at the desk said, "I just need to see proof of Florida residency from someone in your party." I was taken aback and asked, "Excuse me?" She explained that the reservations were under a promotion for Florida residents, and one member of our group needed to have a valid Florida ID or proof of residency. My stomach dropped, and I was unsure what to do. I explained the situation, and she mentioned that she was seeing this issue frequently and suggested I contact the company, which only led to a generic voicemail. I was frustrated and had no idea how to inform my family, who were outside unpacking the cars. I remembered a family friend lived in Kissimmee, Florida, and I quickly began calling around to get her number. Finally, I reached her, and despite being over an hour away, she said, "I'm on my way. Just stay put." I told my family that the rooms were still being cleaned and we needed to wait, so we went to lunch. She arrived, and the hotel was happy to accept her ID, allowing us to check in. Then there was Universal. I called ahead to explain the situation, and they were very understanding, but they said our only options were to refund the package and buy a new one, or for me to purchase a ticket for the resident to join us, which would work with her ID. I asked her if she was willing to help, and she agreed to come back the next day to show her ID again. I tried to pay her, but she refused to take the money. Universal was incredible about the situation and charged me a 1-day single park pass for residents at $50. I happily paid for it, and from that point on, our vacation was wonderful. I informed my fiancée about the situation so she wouldn't be confused. And on our second to last day, we invited my Florida friend and her husband and kids to join us for a nice dinner. It turned out to be the best meal we had during the trip, and they were great company and amazing friends. We all became close friends afterward, and we had them stay with us when they visited family in Atlanta. We often laugh about that experience. It turns out the company we used, called Attraction Tickets Express, operated under multiple names before being driven out of the state due to complaints and issues similar to ours. I'm not sure what they were gaining from those deals, but however they were deceiving people was enough to shut them down. Story 14. I took the lowest price I found on a classifieds website for a summer cleanup of my yard, $450. The worker showed up for half a day on a Friday and asked if I could pay him half, promising to finish the next week. I paid him half, but he ghosted me. He didn't complete even half the work. I searched for the worker online and found out this is his modus operandi. He bids extremely low on jobs, shows up for a day, takes whatever money he can, and disappears. He doesn't own a limited liability company but advertises under a company name. He changes the company name when it attracts too much attention. By my estimation, he has been doing this for about 15 years. I can scroll through his social media feed and see people calling him a scammer for not completing work after taking payment, with complaints dating back to around 2007. He recently made his social media account private. I created a page for his business on a review site, and more people posted reviews with the same story. He has probably gone through 6 or 7 company name changes since my encounter with him. As others connected the dots and posted reviews on the page I created, they used the old company name, even though he continues to use the same phone number. He also has a criminal record for retail theft. Once a thief, always a thief. This is in the western Chicago suburbs. I will freely name and shame him if it's allowed on this platform. Even though it was a cheap lesson, it still bothers me years later. Story 15. As a child in the United States, having your own car is a symbol of freedom. Now that I am grown, I am tired of car payments and having to drive everywhere. It is expensive. I would prefer to walk or bike to places. Story 16. My mom fell for a scam multiple times. She received a letter claiming that, since she was a customer of a health insurance company, she had won airplane tickets to anywhere in the world for only $200. She paid that amount 2 or 3 times until we managed to stop her. I'm still upset about that, and it happened years ago. Scammers often obtain people's information when they visit the hospital and start targeting older individuals. Story 17. I was paid to visit a church in Eastern Europe. There were nuns collecting payments at the entrance. One nun shortchanged me, and she was aware of it. My friend, standing next to me, remarked that she had done it. I was so surprised that a nun would deliberately shortchange me that I walked away laughing. Story 18. I have 3, one for me, one for my wife, and one for both of us. I bought frozen steaks from the back of a truck because the person who was supposed to get them declined the order, and they needed to sell them. I was young and naive, but they were decent, just not worth what I paid, $100. My wife received an email from a non-affiliated outlet. She saw a great Christmas item for the kids and ordered it. We received shipping notifications, but then noticed delay after delay. After looking it up, we discovered it was a scam. When I went to cancel my order, the site shut down and the email was no longer valid. Luckily, I was able to dispute the charge and get a new credit card issued, so there was no lasting harm. My wife and I went to Las Vegas for vacation and decided to get free tickets and dinner by attending a timeshare presentation. Never again. It lasted over 6 hours. They drove us to a site where there was a demonstration of the property, showed us around, and applied a hard sales pitch. If you refused, they sent another salesperson who tried even harder, and then a third time if you still refused. I never bought into it, and we were placed on a bus waiting for it to fill up before leaving. The show was terrible, and the dinner buffet was awful. Never again. Story 19. I bought a table from an online retailer. I did not know the company, but researched their website and taxation number profile. In Belgium, there is a free register for every company that anyone can check. However, the stalling method paid off for them once they had my money. Luckily, it was not a huge amount, but it still boggles the mind how a financial crime such as this, which is theft because they never sent the money back despite claiming they did, is not pursued by the government, especially when theft of currency is involved. Story 20. 20 years ago, I encountered a pyramid scheme when Amway changed its name to something I can't recall. A friend convinced me to invest, and as a broke college student, I bought in quickly. I soon realized that they did not care about their products. Their main focus was on recruiting others. Story 21. When I was around 20, I received a call from the Internal Revenue Service requesting payment via iTunes gift cards. The previous year, my employer had filed me as tax-exempt, so I did have a tax issue and thought the call was legitimate. They told me that if I hung up or spoke to anyone else about the call, the authorities would be notified and I would be arrested. I fell for it and sent them about $300 in iTunes gift cards. The accent should have given it away, but I was very gullible. Story 22. Chemlon would notify customers that it was time for a particular treatment and word it in a way that made it sound like it was part of the existing contract. Then they would send a bill after completing the treatment. They charged me $120, and I felt foolish for not knowing what was included in my service. Story 23. I lost a video game account worth over €600 by logging into a Russian reskin of the game's site for an epic login bonus. Story 24. Back in high school, I paid for some vehicle bodywork to be done. The technician told me the paint needed to cure for a few more days, and then he would return to install the vinyl decal. Guess what happened? I paid for the decal, and then he didn't show up a few days later. That guy recognized me as a teenager just trying to enhance my first ride. Story 25. Reliance Home and Comfort leases a water softener unit. A valuable lesson. Do not sign contracts while overwhelmed with grief from your mother's passing. Story 26. An elderly woman, probably in her late 60s, flagged me down and explained that she was almost out of gas and did not have any money to fill up. She asked if she could borrow $10 from me, a complete stranger, to get to and from work until payday. She promised to pay me back when she got paid. I was hesitant until she offered her watch as collateral. It wasn't anything special and probably cost about $39 new, but she mentioned that her child gave it to her and that it was meaningful to her. I lent her the $10, we exchanged numbers, and I never heard from her again. Eventually, I think I sold the watch for $1 at a garage sale. Story 27. To preface, I work in IT and am currently pursuing a security certification. I grew up playing RuneScape and was aware of all the scams from that time. Eventually, I returned and started playing old-school RuneScape after quitting RuneScape 3 a long time ago. While browsing the Twitch page for the game, I came across a stream titled Bodhi is Quitting. I am not a huge Bodhi fan, but I knew of him, and the stream had a large audience and was featured on the front page of old-school RuneScape streams. There was a reference in the description to the RuneScape forums. I remember that back in the day you had to log in to view posts, so when I was asked to sign in, I thought nothing of it. Then I was prompted for my multi-factor authentication code, which I also ignored. When I was asked for my old-school RuneScape bank PIN, I was already on autopilot by that point. I entered my PIN, and within 5 seconds, my router was targeted by a distributed denial-of-service attack. By the time I reset it and returned to the game 10 minutes later, my entire bank was emptied of anything valuable, and my whole cash stack was gone. So yes, phishing is alive and well. I thought that Twitch wouldn't permit something like that on their site, let alone on the front page. Story 28. I didn't fully fall for it, but I encountered a remote work scam. After a ridiculous interview, they tried to have me send them money to receive an iMac workstation setup. When I confronted them about it, I got ghosted. Story 29. Back in 2010, I fell for the scheme of sending $200, promising that my contact at CVS would accidentally send me $2,000 on a gift card. I was in a difficult financial situation and remained broke. Story 30. I was recruited by a modeling agency on the streets of my old town that was looking for attractive children when I was around 12 years old. I went to their office where they took some photos of me while I was wearing basic street clothes, so nothing special, to send to their superiors. I paid $50, but I was with one of my parents, so it wasn't actually my money. I thought this would sign me up for their list of potential child models. My family waited for a call from that agency, but obviously, I received none, and they moved their office to another location within a week. The scam should have been obvious to my parent and me, not because we had to pay $50. Since we knew nothing about how this recruitment worked, we assumed that an investment was necessary, but because I was not very attractive at that time. I had a bowl cut when all the other kids had spikes or surfer haircuts, and I looked like a toddler version of a monkey, just with less hair on my body, sporting exactly 10 centimeters of hair that only plastic mannequins had to look more lifelike. Now, by comparison, I look much better than I did back then. I may not be a model, but I am certainly above average in appearance, and you could say that puberty had a significant impact on my looks. Story 31. I am a popular girl you have a crush on. We can be friends, and I promise there are no ulterior motives to humiliate or bully you from me or my friends. Story 32. One of my regional managers, Mike, dangled a promotion to a traveling training position for upper management at our branch of fast food drive-in restaurants in northeast Colorado and southwest Nebraska. It would have meant a 300% raise, benefits, and recognition for all the hours I had already put in. The catch? First, I had to have experience running a restaurant as a general manager. When a slot opened up in Lexington, Nebraska, I took it, and it was the most challenging work experience of my life. I was working 65 to 70-hour weeks due to having to cut staff hours because of a $1,700 deficit in food costs and high labor costs. I caught pneumonia, but my second-in-command, who was being groomed to take over after I finished hiring her new team, decided she didn't want to work at our restaurant anymore. She called in sick for 2 weeks straight and then didn't show up when she was due back from her vacation. So, I worked basically from open to close 5 days a week, with lunch to close the other 2 days. I met with the local sheriff, who had a vested interest in ensuring my new team was no longer dealing drugs through the drive-through window. The local bank was concerned about claims that we were depositing more than we actually had. A pizza restaurant in town called me twice, wondering why we hadn't been by for any more food swaps, which the previous manager had never paid for or even reported, leading to that massive deficit in food costs. My lunch crew told me they were usually delivering drugs while on the clock. Our previous general manager was calling me daily demanding his last paycheck while the police were investigating him for all these issues. He showed up one day and tried to pressure me into giving him his check, which I truthfully told him I didn't have. I didn't know if it was legal for my boss to withhold his check. I certainly didn't care, as that was between them as far as I was concerned. We also didn't return the pipe we found hidden in the lockers in the back. But I showed up every day, put in the training to get my restaurant to pass an inspection, raised our mystery shop scores to over 90% for the first time ever, and fixed the labor and food cost discrepancies. After all that, the regional manager said, "Oh, we're not hiring for that position yet." After 2 months of hard work, don't burn yourself out for a fast food job. It never works out. Story 33. I pre-ordered Fallout 76 and felt pretty scammed, to be honest. I believe many AAA games today feel like scams, especially with some of the ridiculous monetization they try to force into the games. Story 34. I just want a nice person who treats me well. All I have ever wanted was to be a wife and a mother. I never do things like this. This is just not like me. Story 35. I always get deceived when people pretend that they like me. Turns out they are just being nice, waiting for the right moment to tell me to go away without directly saying it. I fall for it every time. Story 36. I was in Rome on the third leg of a long European vacation. I had read up on various scam types and had not encountered any trouble thus far. I was waiting outside a shop with my son when a younger man approached and struck up a conversation. He was enthusiastic and friendly. We even had a brief chat. Next thing I knew, he reached into his bag and gave my son a bracelet, then one for me. I started rummaging through my pockets for change, hoping I had only a couple of euros, but I had 6 euros and some change, so I gave him the 6. He was quite slick. Story 37. I took the name of my first pet and the name of the street I grew up on to create my online persona. It took me more than 10 years to realize that it was a joke, and those were actually the most common answers to security questions for accounts. Story 38. If you sign up for the gym now, we will reduce the sign-up fee from 150 euros to 20 euros. What a deal, I thought. That sign-up fee is only there so they can reduce it and make it seem like you got a great bargain. Story 39. Superannuation. What happens when all the wealthy baby boomers retire and deplete their funds? I thought our smaller investment accounts were profitable because the investment pool was so large. If they remove the large accounts when those individuals retire, how do we benefit? The only viable way seems to be to mislead the next generation into investing so our investments can yield more profit. Feels like a cycle. If they truly wanted us to retire comfortably, they would reward hard work and remove the retirement age, but they don't. It doesn't matter how hard you worked compared to someone who only worked for 5 years. You both retire at the same age and gain access to the same benefits. They complicate things further by creating a tax structure that penalizes you if you try to pursue the same path on your own, making it feel impossible for the average person to succeed. I've come to realize I will likely be gone long before my funds are accessible anyway. Story 40. Diablo 2. You could trade any item with other players. There was a time when the Stone of Jordan was the ring that everyone used as currency for high-value items. such and such would be 10 stone of Jordans or whatever. The thing that got me was they initiated the trade. I put my high-value item in the window, and they put their stone of Jordans in their window. I hovered over them to ensure that they were indeed stone of Jordans. Right before I hit accept, they canceled the trade. They also pretended to get really upset with me for canceling the trade, making a big deal about it. After a bit of tirade, they said, "Okay, let's try again," telling me to hurry up. They put rings back in the trade window. I put my item in and hit accept. The problem was they used other rings that looked like stone of Jordans. I didn't verify the second time that they were actually the stone of Jordans, so I traded a high-value item for a bunch of junk rings. They immediately left the game. I tried to find them, but had no luck. I was temporarily devastated. It was the first time I had been scammed, and the last. A valuable lesson was learned. Story 41. I mailed my photo and $150 to China for a fake identification. Everyone was using IDGo or something similar, but I thought I was smarter by finding a cheaper option called ID Chief. I like to think my foolish face was displayed on a wall of shame for a while. Story 42. I paid someone to level up my character in Star Wars Galaxies a long time ago. It's technically not a scam, but I wonder why people even play at that point. Story 43. After 2 children and 8 years of marriage, my ex-wife divorced me, saying she never really loved me and that she saw me as a means to escape her abusive family. Once we moved to a new city for a new job, far from her parents, she was able to plan her separation from the marriage without her parents or me finding out. Story 44. When I was 16, I followed many gaming Instagram pages. One was advertising a modded Grand Theft Auto 5 account with billions of dollars and everything unlocked. He was selling the account for $25. At that time, I barely had that much to my name. I drove to the local Walgreens, bought a PlayStation Network gift card, and rushed home excitedly. Once home, I started messaging this guy on Instagram. He asked me to send the code so he could verify it worked, and then he would send me the account credentials. Sure enough, I gave him the code without thinking. He didn't respond for a few minutes, and the next thing I knew, he had blocked me. I panicked and tried to redeem the card, but it indicated that it had already been redeemed. It took me a while to process what had happened and how wrong I felt. I was furious. I proceeded to create multiple accounts to trash his Instagram by naming them "Scammer's username sucks" and "Scammer's username is a scammer." He blocked me every time as expected. This experience still haunts me. I remember the username even. Anyway, I learned my lesson. Story 45. When I was young, I was home alone in the afternoon. The doorbell rang, and at the door was a woman, out of breath. She told me that she had fallen down a street and was waiting for the ambulance. She said that the ambulance was still far away and she needed a little pick-me-up. She asked if she could have something to drink, like wine. Of course, I gave it to her. She did look like she needed help after all. Years later, it finally sunk in. I still cringe to this day. Story 46. I received a text from my boss stating that he was in a meeting with a significant client and needed my help to purchase an Apple gift card. The entire time, I thought this felt like a scam. I don't get paid to do this. They tried to have me do it again, but this time I messaged one of the higher-ups about it, and they confirmed that it was indeed a scam. I felt violated, but most of all, like an absolute fool. They conducted their research, and it was very unsettling. Now, we have biannual training on scams and phishing because of this incident. Story 47. Your package has arrived at the distribution center. Please fill out the required form to have the package delivered. Story 48. When cell companies emerged, requiring customers to subscribe to a plan, I have been without a plan for over 25 years and I am doing just fine. Story 49. My credit card was compromised recently after I tried to buy plane tickets on Google Flights. Some of the websites it promoted were scams. Right after I entered my credit card details, they attempted to make a transaction for 2 to 3 times the cost of the flight. Thankfully, my bank caught it immediately. Story 50. What is a scam you still can't believe you fell for? Frequently asked questions about karma farming in online communities. Life. Dating. Story 51. I was in New Orleans when a shoeshine guy approached me. He said, "I'll bet you the price of a shoe shine, which is $10, that I can tell you where you got your shoes." He proceeded to shine my shoes while expressing that I shouldn't feel bad about losing $10 because I wasn't the first and wouldn't be the last to lose that amount. When he finished, he said, "I don't know where you bought those shoes, but you got them in New Orleans." Story 52. I took Ambien and apparently I was sleepwalking when I went to a Maine Coon cat website and paid a scammer $400 to have a Maine Coon shipped to my house. When I woke up to texts and emails, this person was asking for more money, and I was shocked by what I had done. Story 53. Prosperity Gospel and Faith Healers. If you fall for either, you are fundamentally gullible and lack an essential degree of critical thinking. Story 54. The American dream involves recruiting young people into the military based on values such as honor, duty, and protection, only to serve corporate and financial interests rather than national defense. Once they are no longer needed, they are discarded. It is a significant deception. Story 55. I bought Bitcoin in 2013. Everyone told me it was a scam, but I wouldn't listen to reason. Now I am mortgage-free with significant savings and feeling proud of my decision. Story 56. Those individuals sell boxes of meat from the back of a truck. Large boxes that contained about 5 pounds of low-quality, mechanically tenderized steak. Story 57. My car's warranty had expired, and I needed to pay $250 per month for it to be covered again. This occurred within the first 5 months of me owning my first car. I had no idea how any of it worked. Story 58. Microsoft Point Scam in Modern Warfare 2, 2009. A person promised a modded lobby invite, but I got blocked immediately instead. That's a loss of $20 from 15 years ago. Story 59. Back when I was in college in the early 2000s, I received an email about someone dying in a foreign country, claiming I was chosen to receive millions of dollars. I thought it was real and that I was going to be rich. Thankfully, I didn't send them any money. Story 60. 3-card Monty on Oxford Street in my early 20s. I also experienced one of those shop front scams where they quickly sell people a lot of items that turn out to be worthless. I don't believe I lost more than 100 pounds, so I'm grateful for that. Story 61. Counter-Strike. Global Offensive Skin Trading. I was tired and saw a proposed trade. I accepted it. I lost value by trading my knife for a gun skin, resulting in a total loss of 250 Canadian dollars. If it seems too good to be true, then it likely is. Story 62. I was approached by a friend from school who was always a stand-up, honest, and forthright guy about a multi-level marketing scheme. I had no reason to believe he was lying about anything, and he did have money. His salesmanship worked because I connected his lifestyle with what he was selling me. I had no real evidence to suggest he was being malicious or trying to rope me into a pyramid scheme. However, I did fall into his group of people who worked for him, made a fool of myself, and lost some money in the process. I haven't talked to him or seen him since school. Story 63. I purchased a Lego set from a fraudulent Chinese website called Jacami. Fortunately, I received a refund through PayPal. Story 64. I emailed a thank you message to my bank, expressing my gratitude for notifying me about a suspicious transaction that occurred while I was logging into my account. During work hours, I decided it would be nice to send a genuine email to my bank. However, as a couple of hours passed, my initial thought turned into growing concern. I checked my actual bank account app, and I was shocked by what I found. Story 65. A group of 4 of us went to Mexico. Fifth Avenue is where all the shopping is. We read and were told that the workers there might try to scam you by claiming they work at your resort, especially since they can see your wristband. Somehow, we ended up being scammed and bought these cenote diamond earrings for our kids for $180 a set. When we returned and spoke with the worker, he laughed and told us that they weren't real and advised us to get our money back. I still feel foolish. Story 66. I was trying to get my dad a PlayStation 5 as a gift. I already had one, so I wasn't too concerned, but the deadline was approaching and they were still scarce. I overpaid $800 on Facebook Marketplace. It was completely my fault, and I know I wouldn't have made the mistake if I hadn't felt the pressure of my self-imposed deadline. I eventually got one at the manufacturer's suggested retail price, set it up in my house so he wouldn't have to worry about downloading games or creating an account at first. He still hasn't taken it out of the box. Story 67. I took a cab from Cancun back to the airport, and the driver asked me to pay his associate, who wore the same shirt and badge and carried a walkie-talkie, because his card machine was not working. I told them I would get cash from the airport ATM, but they claimed those machines were broken. I realized I was being taken advantage of when I walked in and saw 4 ATMs. Instead of 500 pesos or $50, they charged me 5,000 pesos, which totaled over $500. I had international protection with my credit card and filed an appeal. They claimed it was my fault. I escalated the situation further and received 18 pages of forged signatures and general merchandise receipts. The representatives at my credit union were shocked that the decision was not overturned and said they could not do anything. I canceled my card and hired a lawyer through my workplace's legal program. He falsely claimed he was handling my case and had spent 6 hours on it at $150 an hour, which was completely untrue. I heard nothing from him during that time. The legal plan I paid $12 per paycheck for ultimately let me down, along with the hotel providing the cab service, the cab driver, the individual on the street, my credit union, and the lawyer. I stopped donating to charity for a while until the amount I would have given equaled the amount I had lost. That was the only way I could feel balanced and move on from the experience. Story 68. 7 to 8 years ago, I fell for a Bitcoin pyramid scheme. A friend of mine recommended it because he also invested and received a bonus for bringing people on board. I invested 15,000 euros, which was about 8 Bitcoins at the time, and was promised a payout of 4,000 euros a month until I reached a total of 25,000 euros. Long story short, the company was shut down a month later by the European Union for unethical practices, and we never saw our money again. I still can't believe I fell for crypto trade. Story 69. I have a paid subscription fee for dating apps. I learned the hard way that it is an absolute waste of money. Story 70. I got pranked by that old technique in massively multiplayer online role-playing games where they say things like, "I have a hack that duplicates items. Give me that weapon of yours for free because I will duplicate it and return it to you." I never saw that weapon again, and since it was the only one I had to buy the most basic and inexpensive one. I usually spent my money on upgrading everything, so at that time, I had no funds left and had to start fighting level 1 monsters as a level 25 player who could defeat level 40 mobs. Story 71. I'm not sure if it's a scam, but I totally think it is. I'm just not sure how they got money from it. My child has some issues and he has no friends. Please give him a message for his birthday. He is a super nice and great kid who is bullied for various reasons, and no one responded to his birthday invitation. It affected me deeply, but who knows, maybe it's not a scam. I haven't looked into it. I feel like something happened after I got involved, but I never received anything from it. Story 72. The Mormon Church. Joseph Smith put his head in a hat to translate gold plates that no one ever saw? No. Story 73. When I got LimeWire back in the day, I saw an advertisement for a music application called BearShare. It said $1 for all the music downloads you would ever need. I convinced my mom to get it, and it ended up costing her around $400. I felt so bad and foolish. Story 74. Getting a yearly subscription to eHarmony. I wanted to cancel, so I emailed them and received a sarcastic response denying my request to cancel the subscription. Don't fall for it, everyone. Story 75. My Facebook account was hacked about 4 years ago. I owned 2 small businesses at the time, and Facebook was my other source for advertising besides word of mouth. I went on YouTube and came across some people who claimed they could help me recover my account. I am not sure how I feel about that, but I ended up losing $100. Story 76. Remember those balance wristbands? Yeah, 12-year-old me got duped, and I'm still upset with myself, especially because I've always been a skeptic. Story 77. I traded my Pidgeot for a Dratini because an older kid said a diamond was rarer than a star. No wonder Camp banned Pokemon cards. It was basically a free-for-all for predatory mean kids. Story 78. Press Alt F4 to receive free items in a Minecraft Hunger Games multiplayer server back in 2012. Story 79. I encountered a case opening site for Counter-Strike Global Offensive that fished for login information using a fake Steam login page. Initially, it seemed credible and I believed it. Unfortunately, I fell for it 3 times before realizing what was happening. I went through Steam support 3 times to recover my account before I understood why I was being targeted. Story 80. Someone sent me a message saying, "Someone has tried to withdraw $10,000 from your bank account. If this is not you, please take action." Thankfully, I didn't have a bank ID yet, so my account remained safe. Story 81. I was in a bathroom at a New York City hotspot a few decades ago and saw a sign that read, "For a good time, call Molly at number." It was definitely not a good time. Story 82. I fell for Primerica, but I have to say it wasn't that bad. They sold a decent term life insurance product, and while I didn't sell anything with them, I gave them my money and attended a class. As soon as I attended the class expecting to learn more about what insurance was and how it worked, and it turned out to be all about selling it, I was done. Story 83. Marriage. It isn't for everyone, and it isn't forever, no matter how many till deaths you recite. Story 84. When I was younger and had just gotten my job, I had a Steam account on which I probably spent $700. You receive emails and texts from Steam about reports, not just a Discord message. Story 85. I was 11 or 12 years old around 2001, playing on the website Neopets. I was really into collecting paint brushes, and I had 3 purple paint brushes. Someone on one of the forums wanted that color brush. He messaged me and asked me to send him the brush, promising to send me Neopoints in exchange. I think I asked him why we couldn't use the shops or the trading post for a fair exchange. I don't remember his response, but it was probably something about having issues with his bank. Reluctantly, I agreed and sent him the paintbrush. Then I waited for the money. He didn't respond or reach out after I sent the brush. A few minutes later, I asked him if he received it. He claimed he didn't and said there must have been a glitch, so naturally, I sent him another one. Then he blocked me. I reported him to the Neopets team, though I have no idea what happened after that. There were fewer players back then, so they were likely able to take action and freeze his account. I was very upset for the rest of the day and probably cried to my parents about how unjust it is that some people can be so cruel. They empathized and we talked about it, which was very sweet. Whenever I feel silly about falling for it twice in a row, I remind myself how lucky I am to have learned at a young age to always question people's motives and to do everything the proper way with no exceptions. I had trust issues for a while, but it was worth it to learn such an important lesson. Story 86. About 20 years ago, I was a student who was really into photography and entered one of my photos in an online competition. A few weeks later, I received a letter congratulating me and informing me that my photo would be printed in a coffee table book. I was thrilled and wrote an email to the company thanking them for giving an aspiring photographer a chance. I then visited their website using the special link provided in the letter to look at the coffee table book. I could purchase one for $70. I realized quickly that the scam was that everyone who entered won the competition, and they would print a version of the book with your photo in it for $70. I suppose they relied on participants encouraging their friends and family to buy one as well. I didn't purchase one, but I still feel foolish for thanking them in my email. Story 87. The crystals, sages, and shamans that claim they can assist you on your healing journey cannot replace the understanding that Jesus Christ is the only way. Additionally, most home warranties cost over $100. Story 88. I purchased an item from Facebook and sent the seller a debit payment but did not receive the item, resulting in a loss of £200. Story 89. Trying to buy a somewhat expensive camera from an estate sale on Facebook Marketplace, then trusting them to ship it. Story 90. I was young and naive, but I fell for a piece of propaganda when Canada wanted to allow American telecommunications companies into the country to help reduce prices. Rogers and Bell raised concerns about why we should allow these American companies to use the broadband and network towers built by Canadians. I remember agreeing with that, However, as I matured and looked back, I realized that these companies did not care about that and only wanted to dominate the market by refusing competition. Story 91. I bought gift cards from someone online that were inactive. They had been for Xbox Live and cost between $80 and $100. I was very frustrated. Story 92. I worked for a multi-level marketing door-to-door sales operation run by Sitcor. They contacted me right after graduation about a potential marketing position for their Fortune 500 clients. The office was impressive, located in a prime downtown area, filled with attractive postgraduates in suits, which made me think it was a legitimate opportunity. The CEO provided little information during my interview, but I accepted the job because I needed to start supporting myself and figured I could apply for other positions simultaneously if it didn't work out. The following week, I was going door to door with the assistant general manager selling AT&T products in suburban neighborhoods. Surprisingly, I excelled at it and made many great friends whom I still keep in touch with today. However, it was also one of the worst jobs I've ever had. We worked 12-hour days with no salary, earning only commission. There were mandatory team nights twice a week, and we also worked on Saturdays. Some days I logged 20,000 steps without earning any money. Most people either did not make it through the initial training or lost interest in door-to-door sales once they faced the job's reality after a few weeks. Upper management at Sitcor provided numerous seminars on how to interview effectively to persuade potential candidates, but I couldn't bring myself to do that. I always aimed to be as transparent as possible about the job during my interviews. Eventually, most people quit except for myself and 3 others. We endured a few months, trying to get the office back on track for the CEO since her income relied on the sales made by the team. However, I eventually grew tired of the grind and informed her I was done. I asked the CEO if I could use her as a reference for future jobs, believing we had established a solid professional relationship. I applied for a few entry-level software sales roles and received a response from a reputable company in my area. I went through multiple interviews, and they virtually gave me the green light to start once they completed my reference check. I provided my references, eager to begin, until I received a phone call a few days later. They informed me that one of my references had given a negative review. The CEO had told them I was lazy, frequently arrived to work late, called out often, lacked motivation, and was not a cultural fit, despite my working 70-plus hour weeks for months and doing my best to ensure her business was in a solid position before leaving for my next opportunity. I didn't get the position with the first company, but another one offered me an interview for an entry-level sales development representative role. They were willing to pay me $15,000 more than the role I missed out on, and I managed to stay there for almost 4.5 years. I was promoted after a year as a sales development representative to an account executive position, where I earned a significant income. I currently work at my second company since my door-to-door sales days and now make even more, so it all turned out well in the end. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.